Hello everyone, thanks for coming along. Appreciate you coming along. I know it's the first talk after lunch. It's a lot more today, so we do appreciate you coming to see us. Could you get the Slido code on the screen, please? So we're going to do this a little bit different. There are no slides. This is a panel. And get your questions in on Slido, and we'll go through those kind of as we talk. We'll pick some of those, and we'll try and answer some of your questions. But I'm going to set some context first before I introduce the panel. So platform engineering, platform as a product, it's not new anymore, right? We've been talking about it. This is now the third platform engineering day. There's been lots of talks, lots of learnings over the last few years. We've heard a lot about the developer experience, developer portal, IDPs, the benefits for consumers of consuming products. A brilliant talk just before lunch by Kat around all of that. Lots and lots of talks at KubeCon about all of that, and even today. But when we decided to pitch this proposal, we wanted to try something different. Now, the CNCF rules don't allow you to have 5 people from the same organization. So I'm joined on stage by 3 people from our org and 2 friends. And what we're trying to do is get some different personas out there. It's not just about the developers. There's other benefits to platform engineering that we want to try and get out and try and share those with you today. Because we think there's a lot of benefits for organizations, especially big financial services orgs like ours. So we've assembled a brilliant panel. Hello. We've got a product owner, an evangelist, an architect, me. We've got a transformation guru. We have an author and a regular conference speaker, and I can keep going. We've got a product engineer, a supplier. We've got one of our lead engineers, and we've got one of our cloud engineers. So, before I keep going talking, let's get my lovely panel to introduce themselves. You want to go first, Nicki?
Sure. So, hi everybody. So my name is Nicki Watt. So I'm the CTO at a company called OpenCredo. We're actually in the process of rebranding, so we're actually going to be called Trifork soon. So I thought I'll actually just get that out there early. But we're a software development consultancy that's based here in London, and we help customers to build and adopt emerging technologies. One of the areas that we really focus in is around platform engineering. So a lot of experience with helping organizations do the technical and the sort of people side of trying to build platform engineering initiatives. So yeah, that's me.
Hi, I'm Sapphire Mason-Brown. I'm a product engineer with a company called Syntasso, and we work on a product called Kratix. Kratix is a framework for building your own platforms that are tailor-made to your organization. Prior to working with Syntasso, I worked as a consultant where I supported a lot of different platform engineering teams who were supporting their developers to provision services within their organization. Over to you.
Hiya, my name is Ashley. I'm part of the NatWest group, and I'm working in the platform engineering team.
Thanks, Ashley. Hi, everyone. So my name's Joel King. I'm a principal engineer in the Cloud Platforms department within NatWest Group. I've been in financial services now for about 2 decades, so I'm fairly well versed with some of the challenges and pitfalls of building out platforms within a bank. And saying that out loud also makes me feel like I'm probably getting on a bit. So, yeah, other than that, I've been automating stuff for quite a long time now, most recently in sort of private and public cloud, and then moving into the platform engineering space. I think probably everyone knows here what platform engineering is, hopefully, but I saw a description which sort of resonated with me. So I guess our role is kind of trying to build stuff that makes it easier for other people to build stuff faster, safer, and with few grey hairs.
Awesome. And those people aren't just developers and developer experience, right? And we'll talk about that today, but we think there's benefits to the wider organization. So I'll do a little bit of scene setting about kind of who we are and what we do. And it'll only take a couple of minutes. So the 3 of us work for NatWest Bank. If you haven't heard of NatWest Bank, we're one of the top 4 banks in the UK. We serve 20 million customers. We're big. We've got over 60,000 people in the organization. We've got lots of divisions, lots of teams, lots of engineers, and we've got lots of challenges. And I've talked a lot about those challenges in previous talks. So, if you haven't seen those before, where have you been? They're on YouTube, so check some of those out, because I'm not going to cover a lot of that today. In the division that I sit in, Cloud Platforms, we've been highly successful over the last 10 years enabling our business units to go off and build fantastic solutions that help serve our customers' needs. We've given them a lot of managed services, we've given them Terraform, we've given them tools, and we've encouraged them to go off and do stuff. And they've done a fantastic job of that. But, we're now seeing through conferences like this, we're seeing everyone talking about the benefits of sort of bringing some of that back, starting to reduce the cognitive load, starting to kind of centralize and make things simpler, quicker for them. And as Joel said, serve their needs really, really quick. And so that's really what we're kind of working on at the moment. And we think there's lots of benefits. So we're going to try and get some of those out over the next 30, 40 minutes. And we're going to use Slido. So keep your questions coming in, and we'll try and pick some of those. You can see them coming in at the moment. And I need to keep moving my finger to keep it open. All good. Okay. So we should probably start by maybe talking about platform engineering. What is platform engineering? What's the concept? What things can we learn and we can share with you? Nicki, you did an awesome talk last year. I've been to many of your awesome talks. You did one earlier on again at Open UK. So maybe we could start with you.
Yeah, so I think Joel did a pretty good introduction in terms of what platform engineering is, but really it's about building and maintaining an internal platform for your developers to help them be able to go faster, safer, and build things more reliably. It's really, I would say, about trying to take the heavy lifting away from the developers so that they can be able to concentrate on the things that the business side of things, and not having to worry about infrastructure and CI/CD pipelines and all that type of stuff. So it's really about trying to improve their sort of productivity, but it's not just around that. It's really also around the people side of things. So looking at, yes, the tooling which makes that work well, but also the people and the processes which can be used together to make a genuine sort of platform engineering initiative which can help things to move faster. So that's, I guess, on the platform engineering side of things. Maybe on the platform as a product, which many people have heard about, I think, in terms of the talks that have been here. That's really about treating your platform as you would any other major sort of product that you're developing. So putting your users front and center, and that's generally the developers, because that's who you're building it for. But as Chris said, it's not only about the developers, it's also about the other stakeholders, and there's a lot of benefits to the broader organization when it comes to that. So yeah, looking at things like documentation, roadmaps, and really kind of, looking at it from a holistic perspective, not just a collection of tools.
Okay, and you just mentioned tools there. What kind of tools are available? Not developer tools, but tools to kind of help the organization go on this journey, kind of structure their approach, and maybe kind of steer them in the right direction. What's out there that people should really go up and look after today?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you said not just look at the tools, because I think if you look at the CNCF landscape, there's like hundreds of them there, and you're like, oh my gosh, where do I start? But really, I would say in terms of going on your journey, it's really important to understand, like, what are you trying to achieve and how do I get there? And that's where I think something like the platform engineering maturity model can be something that's really helpful. So that was brought out by the CNCF in October of 2023. And it provides I'd say, a really nice framework to say, look, these are all of the aspects and the dimensions of platform engineering that is important if you want to build a successful platform engineering initiative. And it kind of gives you a bit of a matrix as to, the different levels. And you can then plot, where am I on my journey? Where am I starting out? And where do I want to get to? And you can then kind of plot and see, okay, how can I go from maybe, let's say, a level 1 to a level 3 or in different sort of dimensions. So it gives you this framework to understand what are the important aspects, but also where am I trying to get to, and how can I move there? And once you've done that, then I'd say that the tooling and the other things become important. But it's important to understand, what you're actually aiming for in the first place. Right,
okay. And that was really important for us, right? We've been part of that platform working group. Ted, who we work for, was one of the original kind of reviewers of that, and kind of, Syntasso contributed to the community. So that was kind of one of the tools that we followed and started going off on our journey and trying to see how we could better and how we could do different things for our customers, internal and external, right? And, I think some of the things that we were maybe trying to get out of that was, how do we transform our division? How do we stop the platform teams and our engineers having to think that they solve all problems themselves? How do they get other people to contribute, maybe do inner sourcing, spread that load across the different platform teams, think of products, just like Kat was talking about this morning, try and reduce that cognitive load, and maybe stop shifting down and stop shifting left, and kind of centralize things a bit more so that we can actually spread that load, give people a standard way of doing things. And those tools really helped us in doing that. Awesome. So, heard a lot from us too. We should probably spend the rest of the panel. Sapphire, do you want to talk about kind of our journey with you guys and Cratix and how that helps and how that aligns with the platform maturity model and all the stuff that we've taught so far?
Yeah, certainly. So I'll start with a little bit of an overview of what Cratix actually is. So Cratix is a framework for building platforms for your organization. And if there's anything that I and other people working at Syntasso have observed when it comes to platform engineering and platform teams, it's that platforms look very different in different organizations, and to an extent they reflect the requirements of that organization. So, for instance, when it comes to making services available on your platform, it's not just the provisioning of a database, for instance, it's the provisioning of a database alongside all of the business-specific rules that need to be considered when you're doing the act of provisioning. So what are the regulatory rules that need to be abided by? What are the compliance rules that need to be abided by? And that's central to how Cratix works, and it does this through the concept of a promise. So a promise encapsulates both the provisioning of a given thing as a service alongside all of the organizational considerations that need to be accounted for. Our journey with NatWest started a few years ago when the NatWest team were trying to solve a number of problems. They identified a number of challenges, which Chris has said that he's spoke about in other talks. But amongst them were a desire to deliver things faster, to have a more simplified approach for delivery, to enable inner sourcing, as Chris said, and also to enable self-service within the organization. And the strategy for working towards those solutions was one that had platform as a product at the heart of it. So Chris's team reached out to a number of teams across the bank to identify what services they could reflect their expertise within. So you have teams who are domain experts working on promises for the platform. So you've got database teams who are working on database-specific promises that reflect all of what provisioning databases look like within the bank, alongside all the additional things that need to be considered. And the journey with NatWest is ongoing. There's still a way to go, and there are still the team is still reaching out to other teams within the bank to enable them to continue to provide services available on the platform and to offer users and customers a much more rich offering. And I know the team's doing this through a lot of reaching out to other teams as well as training, so that other teams are equipped with the ability to create promises for their platform.
Right. And this is a learning event. This is a kind of like a training event, right? We're all here to learn something. So I'm glad you used that word, training, because you guys have been really helping us in our journey and how we kind of transform our division and we get people trained up on these new technologies. There's a lot of just the concepts as well, right? There's a lot of new things there to teams that might have existed for a long time. They might have been doing even on-premise type work rather than cloud stuff, right? So there's a lot there. Can you talk about how you've kind of helped us with that and the things that we've done that have helped with building teams and kind of that transformation journey?
Yeah, so I would say that no one off the bat knows how to build promises for platforms. It's a skill that needs to be developed and worked on. And at NatWest, you've been continuously reaching out to teams to equip them with this skill. So you've had a strategy of running boot camps and training opportunities to give to equip other teams with the ability to write promises, so they're able to continuously contribute to the platform, like in the way that it's currently being built out. And that has a focus on not only building promises, but also what it looks like to contribute to the platform as a whole. Because as I was saying before, there's no generic way for building platforms. There is a way that you have introduced within the bank, and that is the strategy that you're taking for all teams who are contributing to the platform.
Awesome, thanks. Joel, Ashley, not heard a lot from you recently. Maybe one of you want to talk about kind of the way we've been doing some of that training, the things that we've done to try and make it fun for people to learn and start using this stuff?
Yeah, sure. So I think as Sapphire called out there, we've been running boot camps now for the past 18 months. And I think it's fair to say that we've learned from the learnings from that. So we've listened to customer feedback from people who have been on those training courses, and we've revamped it several times over the 18 months. And I think we've probably now got to the point where we think we've got a winning formula. The last boot camp, which has just finished up, I think was probably our most successful ever. And I think we've sort of made it a combination of hands-on labs, deep dive sessions, and then we really finished off strong with a hackathon this time. And I really think, that there was so much energy from the hackathon at the last day and a half that we ran this time. I think people really started to think outside the box, get hands-on with the tech, and I think that really made a difference. And yeah, I mean, I feel like we've learned from that over the last 18 months, and we're looking forward to doing the next one now, so yeah.
Ashley?
Yeah, I think just another thing on what Joe was saying about the hackathon and stuff, I think for teams working on this hackathon, and then once that hackathon's finished, they're then going back to their teams and wanted to continue to work on these promises. And when we first were doing these labs and learning and stuff, we didn't know how to get people to continue going back to their teams and creating things. A lot of people would do the learning and they'd stop. They'd go back to team and be like, yep, learning was good, but I don't know where to go from there. Whereas I think by doing this hackathon, sort of got the rest of their team that maybe wasn't involved in that to think about it, like, what else can we make? Let's see what yous have done. And they can actually show what they've done throughout that learning with that hackathon, which I think was very, very helpful in the end, to keep the spread of the bank and other teams to build promises for the PAP team.
And so how did we get that list of things that they could work on in the hackathon and relate that back to business problems that they could continue with? What process did we go through for that? Maybe.
Yeah, so I think that's an important one. So again, it was going and asking the product owners within hosting solutions, which is the whole department for us, to come up with ideas, for the products within their areas that would sort of really relate back to those real business problems that we needed to solve. So it meant that we could bring those into the hackathons. People could work on things that were sort of close to their day jobs, or for some people anyway, and then really take those back to their day jobs afterwards, as Ashley was saying. And we've seen some really positive outcomes from that. We've had people, continuing to work on some of the hackathon ideas already in their own time, and we've also looked to align resource to take those forward and sort of bring them to fruition in the future.
Awesome. And Ashley, again, haven't heard a lot from you. So, you've had a fascinating journey into the bank and into this whole area. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So when I first joined the bank, I joined in as an apprentice in network clouds. When I first joined the bank, obviously I knew what the bank was, but as an apprentice, I didn't know anything really about cloud. I didn't know anything at all about it. So when I joined as a network engineer, I got a small snippet of AWS, what it can do, and how to obviously connect other people to other areas of the bank. Then I moved on to the AWS engineering team. It's a shared services. So that's where we sort of create VPC endpoints, transit gateways to connect to on-prem and network firewalls and stuff. And when I joined that team, that's where I got to learn a lot more about AWS. There was more sides to AWS. There was different things that you could do. And we created a lot of Terraform modules. So it was a lot of learning Terraform, learning to code. And we gave these modules, say like EKS, we would write the module out, we would obviously add the variables, allow them to edit the variables, and we would just give that code to other teams to use. So we had to hope that they had the knowledge of AWS, how to do Terraform, how to work a module. We would write our onboarding documents trying to make it as clear as possible on how they can deploy EKS or any other module, even just as simple as a VPC endpoint. I then moved to, with the PAP team, joining their feature team, learning all about platform as a product. And that's where my eyes really opened up. That's where even more parts of AWS you were learning. And I had a small idea about EKS, but joining that really made me have to have a deeper dive into EKS, how that fully worked. And it was a challenge. And the work, the speed that people went to build these promises, like Sapphire was saying, all these different promises that you're building to help other teams. It was moving quickly, and it was a fast learn that I had to do. And I think when it came to promises, at first I didn't fully understand. I was like, why do we need this? But then to learn more, the issues that we were having within shared services is hoping that people had that knowledge of how to deploy Terraform, how to use Terraform. Whereas then with promises, they don't necessarily need to have that knowledge. They can click a button if they need that EKS module. It's much quicker for them to be able to deploy that because they don't need the ins and outs of how Terraform is going to work. The deployment is much quicker, it's much smoother. There's less errors. When we're deploying that Terraform, if they've edited a slight bit in our Terraform code, that might not deploy properly, which can make it more complicated for us, and it slows other teams' work down. Whereas for promises, it's much quicker, it's faster, and they don't necessarily need that Terraform information to be able to deploy those products.
Okay, how are we doing for time? Because we can talk and talk and talk. We still good? Excellent. Okay, so there's lots of questions coming in on the Slido. I'm trying to keep it active. I've saw some really juicy ones that I want to answer that aren't top of the board, but I want to get to that. But maybe I'll turn this to the panel and we'll start asking some of those that I saw. The benefits of platform engineering and what we're actually seeing in practice and not just talked about. There was something that scrolled past about the kind of cognitive load question, the end-to-end automation, the product thinking. Maybe we'll pick some of those up. Nicki, you want to maybe talk about that cognitive load reduction one? Because I think what Ashley was just talking about there was, getting away from teams maybe having to do everything themselves for a platform to different people now contributing. Maybe we'll expand on that a little bit? Because I think that's maybe a huge benefit that people aren't really understanding.
Yes, I think that's one of the key points with platform engineering is really, as we say, it tries to take that heavy lifting away from the developer. I think in the past there was a lot of sort of you build it, you run it sort of approaches, which work quite well, I think, in certain size organizations. But when you get to something the size of NatWest and beyond, that model doesn't scale. And from an organizational perspective, having to try and put lots of people with, they have to understand Kubernetes, they have to understand YAML, they've got to understand, Terraform, all that type of stuff. It's a lot for them to be able to have to deal with in one sort of fell swoop. So the platform, when you have a platform, just being able to focus on building a promise or building the things to be able to enable developers to actually build the end products is something which is a real sort of key benefit. I think some of the things I've seen out there as well is it's only when it's done well that you genuinely get, the reduction of cognitive load. Because sometimes, if you don't do it well and it's not maybe self-service, you can actually add burdens to the developers because now they've got to go and they've got to go to 100 portals and do this and click around here. And so you've got to be quite careful about how you put your platform together so that you don't inadvertently actually put more load on the developers. But in reality, when it's done right, I would say that's a key benefit that I've certainly seen out there. And I think there was a talk just prior to this where I think Spotify was talking about by putting their fleet management through into a platform, they reduced the amount of time it took from swapping out a library from about 200 days to just under a week across the fleet. And that's something that the developers didn't have to do. So they didn't have to worry about doing that because the platform took care of that underneath the covers.
Great, thanks. So just trying to have a look at the board all the way up there. Go back a bit so I can see it. New glasses. do you have any insights into what operating patterns and or anti-patterns exist in working in a platform engineering manner? Okay, trying to relate that back. So I've talked a lot about patterns and the challenges that we had. We had a very paper-based pattern approach on how people would go through the process, all the steps they had to go through, the teams they had to get involved in, the checks, the balances, the engineering, all that sort of stuff. You can check those ones out from previous KubeCons. But Ashley kind of started talking about our EKS product, and you used the term product, right? And you came from the cloud team that maybe did some of those original kind of patterns, right, where everyone stuffed all that information in, told you the steps, told you the teams to go to, the processes. Yeah. It was time consuming, right? Maybe you want to talk about kind of what we're doing now with that EKS product that we've kind of been putting out there for our customers and how that really helps them.
Yeah, so as a lot of you know, EKS is huge. There's so many different parts to it, and sometimes it can be very difficult to understand. So what we've tried to do is we've used Cratix to try and wrap a promise around the EKS module. So currently, we've got the module, like I was saying earlier, we've got the module, they deploy that, but they need to understand the code. We're now trying to wrap around a promise around that, which makes it easier for them to deploy that. The product can then be managed, so they don't even need to worry about that. It's all getting updated, upgraded themselves, and all they have to do is run their application on what they want to run. And it's the same thing when you look like wider to that. As you know, with the bank, to get approvals for things can take so long. It can take a while for that to happen. So we are also trying to get AWS accounts. Currently, it can take up to two or more weeks for us to get AWS accounts up and running, for us to then get all the connectivity to, like, say, on-prem, to firewalls, whatever that is. It can take over 2 weeks. We are currently trying to create a compound promise, which is a pile of promises together. And that will be, we can give them the AWS account, all the connectivity they require, and then also EKS can get added into that as well. And we can now do that within less than a day. So the whole point of wrapping all these promises, creating this compound promise, makes the work so much quicker, allows developers to just dive straight in and build exactly what they require. And I think that's a good thing about the EKS module, especially in the bank where it's more and more people are using it. And it means that only there's one EKS and everybody else can then come on and use that. And I think that is very, very helpful when it comes to developer work.
Excellent, thanks. So yeah, those patterns that we had, just to kind of finish that one off, when we looked at those patterns, we kind of identified 3 types of personas. You know, we had highly skilled, highly efficient engineering teams that were able to take those managed services, take that Terraform and other things, and go through that process and do something. And then they could rinse and repeat that. Maybe not all teams had those skills and capabilities. We had some really good teams that were brilliant. They might not have had all the engineering capability, but they were brilliant at orchestrating solutions themselves by asking other teams to do that for them. And then through these talks, right, we've heard of kind of self-service, backstage, right? You've all heard that. And this is really kind of the area we're playing in, right? That whole self-service model. And that EKS product that we're kind of talking about, you know, that's now down to 35 minutes, I think, Joe, for the overall provisioning. And maybe want to add on that?
Yeah, no, that's fine. So, yeah, I mean, just to build on what Ashley said there, I think the whole thing for me with platform engineering is it's never going to cover, like, Cratix isn't the silver bullet for everything, right? It's about, you know, really, we're always going to have potentially use cases which are not suitable. So, for example, you know, sometimes it's about volume. If you're just going to build something once, there's no point automating that, right? You know, to use another analogy, that's like building a spaceship to go to the corner shop, right? It'd probably be cool and be a lot of fun, but it doesn't make sense. And then you're always also going to have use cases where we've got customers who need a lot of control, a lot of flexibility over building out their platforms. And again, that's probably something that's not going to be suitable for Cratix. What we're really aiming at is the kind of 80%. So it's that kind of 80% of people who just want to press a button, call an API, the platform builds, and they can get on with building and shipping code. And that's really, really what we're trying to do here. And I think is probably the essence of platform engineering.
Okay, and you know, the top question on the board at the moment kind of relates to that. And we've got 5 minutes left, and I'm usually going over time, so I'm going to try and stick to it. How do you deal with banking regulations and adoption to the needs of your developer teams? You want to try and...
Yeah, I mean, so I mentioned before, I've been in financial services for quite a long time now, and there's always obviously lots of pitfalls, we need to make sure we're aligning to regulations and all that kind of good stuff. So the whole point of, I guess, what we're doing is trying to build that into the platform. So that means us going out up front, talking to security teams, governance, making sure we're aligned to all the kind of standards that we need to meet, building those security and controls into the platform so that we can provide the kind of audit reports that are needed for the regulators. And by doing that, we're kind of removing that cognitive load away from developers and application teams, so they don't need to reinvent the wheel and go off and do this each time themselves, then go out and speak to security, get their sign-offs. You know, we're looking to kind of completely remove that, build all of that into the platform. So when they press that button, call that API, what comes out the other end is a kind of fully compliant system that meets all of the controls that need to be in place for the regulators. It's definitely not easy. There's lots of challenges and it takes time. But, you know, I feel like we've made really good progress on that. And, yeah, hopefully we're making people's lives easier within the bank by doing that.
So there are a lot of questions there. I'm just trying to scroll. And we will answer all of these, right? We'll do a LinkedIn post or something, and we'll go through all these questions and we'll give you an answer on each one of them. There's brilliant questions here. An awful lot of them seem to be kind of about the regulator, because that is the problem in financial services, right? How do you satisfy the regulator with what you're doing? And I think with the platform as a product type initiative, the only answer to that really is we're baking it in, right? We're trying to take those guide rails, we're trying to come up with the agreed guide rails, the best practice. We're putting our opinion on top of that. You know, the opinion makes the product. The opinion is the glue that binds all these different components together into a product. We're trying to make sure that those guide rails and the regulator requirements are baked into that product so that people consistently consume it. They don't have to do anything, right? If it's made available for them, it's there for them to use. It's already approved. It's been through the governance process. You know, so some of the harder challenges, things like multi-region, and how do you do multi-region Kubernetes, and you know, how do you do cross-region data replication, and you know, for a financial services app. That's for us to fix that. That's for us to take that challenge on board and do that on behalf of our customers, our internal customers, so that they can then come up with innovative products for their consumers. So I think, you know, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, right? But baking all that stuff in is probably the simplified approach. As is there, so I've got it back.
All right, we'll switch them.
I just want to show off my kilt, that's all.
Yeah, very, very quickly, as we don't have too much time left. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the key thing that's required, is to really bake it in. So when it comes to compliance and regulatory type initiatives, if you can prove to your regulator or to the auditors or whatever, we have a process, we have followed it. That's generally what they're after. And a lot of people will do that manually, but if you can say actually it's automated, as long as the developers or as long as the engineers, they put this in, then this process happens, and we've audited that, then they're generally happy with that. So part of getting this right is getting the buy-in from the regulators, from the compliance people and security people, and then baking that in, and then creating that as a pattern for the engineers to consume. And that's, I think, where the promises and the like come in. So you've baked that in, and then you can consume that.
Excellent, thanks. So I was scrolling there because I saw something that went past, and it was all about legacy. And I can't imagine that you're rewriting all your COBOL or your legacy code. And I always like doing this one. Who in the audience is running Kubernetes on the mainframe? Anyone? Come on, don't be shy. No? None? We are, right? And that's part of that complexity and part of that challenge is how do you take that kind of legacy environment and bring it into this model? How do you bring some of these techniques to kind of modernizing that stuff that might have been running for a long, long time, but give them the same benefits as well? And you know, I think we can do that using tools like Kratix, like the platform maturity model. There's lots of things there. But I think that's us out of time now. Yeah, overtime, okay. So thanks very much. Thanks to the panel. You've been brilliant. Thank you.